Hey, I'm Nate.
And I'm Brian with Charge Cycle Works.
Brian and I both have decades of experience in both racing motocross and downhill mountain biking. We're lucky to live here in Salt Lake where we have access to Deer Valley and Park City downhill mountain bike trails, and then of course riding down in southern Utah or here locally around Salt Lake on our motocross bikes. First thing that really drew us to getting a Sur-Ron was the playful nature of it being right in the middle. Right? Not only is it electric, we all know it's going to be the future. Brian and I were able to grab some Sur-Rons, go out and ride on trails that we normally might get ourselves in trouble on the dirt bikes. One of the things that we first noticed was how many upgrades we wanted to do on our first ride. Right? It's the kind of question that everybody asks. We see it on Facebook every day. People are asking about the correct stems, riser bars, tire setup, suspension, so much more. Right? So we've spent hundreds of hours researching everything ourselves, trying to figure out why Sur-Ron may have built their own proprietary disc brake pattern on the back wheel versus being able to put mountain bike disc on the front. Being able to upgrade things like the stem and the riser bar being a direct bolt-on. Again, coming from a mountain bike background, first thing I wanted to do was get rid of the stem that bolts onto the steerer tube itself, right? I've turned enough bars in my past that I wanted a direct mount. So we started with the very simple things. So Brian, are there any things that jump out to you about the very first things you did to yours?
Oh, it's hanging right here.
Tires.
So the stock tires. One of the first rides we did was in southern Utah, and we were high speed, jamming down Jeep roads at top speed, a mix of big rocks and sand and loose dirt, and these tires wash out so easy that I immediately wanted to get rid of the tires.
Yep. So that's a good example of a new tire on a stock rim.
So this is a Dunlop MX-33. It's off of a Super Mini motocross race bike. This was one of the very first things I did. I put a motocross specific racing tire in the front. And that fixed the front. The front was great. But we still have the rear problem.
Yep. So you can't run that tire on the back and really get any benefit from it. It's better than stock, but putting a front tire on the rear just does not get traction like you think it would. It's just not made for it.
Yeah.
Possible, but not a great idea. So what we started doing was testing every tire we could get our hands on.
So this is a rear motocross tire. You cannot fit this on a stock Sur-Ron rear wheel. There's no way to do it.
Yep.
So that one of the first things we started looking at was how do we fix the rear end on these bikes?
Yeah. So the most obvious thing that came to mind, I think, is grabbing the 1821 setup off of our dirt bikes, basically, right? Because we have so many dirt bikes out in the shop or in the garage at any given time, we wanted to start looking at the tires, mocking them up on the Sur-Rons, and even building wheel sets that would fit to start testing.
You check out these teenagers racing Super Minis, and they run the same front tire as the Sur-Ron, except it has a good tire on it, not the flimsy little CST.
Yep.
But on the rear, there's not a 19-inch in the rear, there's actually a 16-inch. So unfortunately the mountain bike community has a lot of ideas of bigger is always better, but when it comes to the Sur-Ron, bigger doesn't necessarily mean better. It definitely means heavier and a lot more power draw.
Yeah. So let's go that direction for a minute. You mentioned mountain bike. That was another setup that we tried and immediately took off of our bikes. So again, if we go to Deer Valley and do a downhill session, one of the things that you'll see every single day is someone getting wheeled out or an ambulance taking someone away. When you go to look at the bike, certain things break, don't get me wrong, but tires rolling off of rims is a surefire way to crash every single time.
I myself have had a pretty serious shoulder injury because I was riding actually this exact tire and it rolled off the rim and flipped me over the handlebars into a rock garden. That happened on a 30-pound mountain bike, not a 110-pound Sur-Ron. So you will never catch me running this on a Sur-Ron, except maybe to show you guys what not to do in a future video. Yeah, so I had a cycling scholarship in college. I have raced a lot of mountain bikes and I've taken my fair share of very hard diggers.
One of the things that I always wanted to do on a mountain bike, the more confidence you gain, the faster you want to corner, because you want to keep every bit of speed that you have. I've rolled too many front tires off of rims. We tried everything to try and make mountain bike tires stronger. Nowhere close to being strong enough for a Sur-Ron. I know people are doing it, not trying to, I guess, diss it too bad, but I personally would never do it again.
No, if you're running a mountain bike tire, please be careful and know that you've got some pretty severe limitations, and if you exceed those limitations, you could have a very severe injury, and we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay, so we rolled out mountain bike. We have been testing 1821s pretty extensively, and I think we both ended up on a 1619.
Yep.
And have been testing that heavily recently. As a matter of fact, we are going to be producing videos. You'll see a couple things on our YouTube. This weekend, we put our Sur-Rons we pushed them really hard on 1619s. Did some sand riding, did some mountainous kind of terrain. We got lucky with conditions, had both loose sand on one day, a lot of whoops, and really deep soft sand. Next day we got a little bit of rain, so we had some really tacky dirt. We did some mountain climbs, hill climbs. With
some big square edge rocks in it that would have flatted a stock CST tire, and a stock mountain bike tire would have been flat within minutes of that type of riding.
So one of the other trails was basically crashing through a rock garden, and we're talking about, like skull-sized boulders. So think about if you're riding through your neighborhood and you just crash directly into a curb. You just ride right over it without thinking about it. Didn't come close to getting a flat. Didn't feel the tire go to the rim. Didn't ding the rim. No flats, nothing. Perfect setup. Yeah, really happy with it.
That was with 15 psi pressure in these tires, and we can go even lower. Tire pressure is a big advantage to going to a motocross tire. You can go way down on your tire pressures.
Yeah, so basically the setup we were running was this. All right, we had the MX 33 on the front.
Got the Shinko Cheater, which is a hybrid tire. It's a motocross blocky tire just like this, but it's got a really soft rubber compound for really sticky rubber for rocks and roots and all that kind of stuff.
Yep. So what size bike do these normally come on?
So these come on a motocross racing bike that a teenager would race. So 85cc, 105cc. These kids will be jumping triple jumps along with the 250s and 450s. They actually go through the turns, in most cases, faster than adults like us. I recall being at the track with Garrett Marchbanks when he was younger, and he was on an 85cc. I was on a Honda 450. His turn speed with this tire setup was pretty close to double what I was doing on a 450. Of course, now he's a professional supercross racer, better rider than I am, but I'm a decent rider as well. So these tires are fully capable of anything you can put them through on a Sur-Ron.
Yep. So this weekend we rode both of our KTMs pretty hard. When we weren't on the KTMs, we were riding the Sur-Rons equally as hard, doing some of the same trails. And interestingly enough, on some of the tighter tracks that we found, some of the tighter trails, I think we both preferred the Sur-Ron, I did for the playful nature of how fast I could take the turns. And that's where those things really shine. Topping out around 50 miles per hour, there's only so much fun you can have, but on smaller trails, being silent, and anytime you can get a chance to turn, if I were to push it any further, I could have drugged my knee at any point. It was holding traction so well that I was laying the bike all the way down. Knees and elbows were almost getting to the ground around certain berms. And that's because these tires are so tacky. They work so extremely well on that kind of terrain that nothing else can come close.
We are off-road only riders. If your deal is urban riding on the street and you're going to run a trials tire like this, that's not a lot of riding that we do. We are hardcore off-roaders, and our advice is mostly going to revolve around the off-road community.
Yeah. So the tests.
So this all comes back to why we're going down this path, why we're creating Charged Cycle Works. Between the two of us, we've done hundreds of hours of research, and in just the first month or so of owning a Sur-Ron, we realized that, for all these new people coming into this industry, and this is a brand new industry, it's in between mountain bikes and motocross, there's so much research that you have to do to figure out how to upgrade your bike. We want to help people out. We're going to do all the research for you. Everything that we sell in our store is going to be 100% compatible with a Sur-Ron, and we're gonna give recommendations on the best upgrade paths based on your type of riding and your budget, because there's some people that are willing to spend this much and some people only want to spend this much. So these are the types of reviews and advice that we're going to be giving. Some of the first stuff you're going to see from us is this is a fraction of the tires and wheels we have. We couldn't fit it all in this area. We're going to be doing a lot of side-by-side comparisons. On the forums, it's all about 1821s. There's not a lot of people talking about 1619 setup that we've migrated to. We're going to do a lot of side-by-sides. We're going to do stock. We're going to do just tire upgrades on stock rims. We're going to do 1821. We're going to do 1619. And we may do a few others, but we're going to show you side-by-side the differences and the pros and cons to each setup, because there is no one perfect setup. Each has cons, each has pros, and we want to explain that and make it clear so you can make an educated decision.
Yep, and we're going to carry all lines. We're going to sell all of them.
Nathan had to run to the airport, get back to work, heading to San Diego, and I needed to wrap this up. So just a little preview of what's to come. Charge Cycle Works will be launching a website soon. So we're putting together basically a one-stop shop for anything from tires to high-end suspension to grips and chain lube. I mean, everything that you need for your Sur-Ron. We have tons of content, tons of videos coming, and subscribe to us, and see you next time.